Double Bills, a podcast in which a cinephile and a genre fan try to broaden each other's cinematic horizons, one film at a time. Each episode, we'll be discussing two films, one chosen by me, Matt Schaefer,
and one chosen by me, Rob Takizawa Lowe. In this episode, we'll be discussing Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters from 1986 and Shunya Ito's Female Prisoner number 701 Scorpion from 1972. We'll talk about what the films were trying to do, what we think of them, and try to see them through each other's eyes. These discussions will be filled with spoilers, so please keep that in mind before listening.
At the end of the episode, we'll try and figure out how the two movies could possibly work together as an awkward double bill.
So, time for our regular catch-up. What have you been watching recently?
Well, looking at the most recent films on my Letterboxd, a film called Sentimental Value, which is Joachim Trier, I think his name is, who is a, not Danish, Norwegian filmmaker. He's been making films for a little while. His previous film was The Worst Person in the World, quite well, and Sentimental Value is a new one. And so also, it's a sort of heavy family drama. Actually, not too similar to the film I'll be talking about today. The main two characters are sisters, and their relationship is sort of a central part of the film. Actually, it's mainly about their relationship with their father, who's a sort of overbearing film director. And my third is a film called Burning.
Not The Burning, the slasher film starring what's his face from Seinfeld? Not Seinfeld, the other one, George
Costanza.
Yeah.
No,
not that one.
It's not that one.
Okay.
No, it's not that film. It's a Korean film based on a Haruki Murakami short story. Yeah, it's very good. It's very different from the short story, which I've read. And it's very good. Two people I know, two good friends of mine, both told me that it's in like their top 10 favorite films ever, which was maybe putting a bit too much pressure on it for me to live up to that. But I can kind of see why. It's a long film. It's very moody. Yeah, it really kind of draws you in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, South Korean films are often very good. A lot of the horrors and thrillers and things they've been putting out for the last decade or so have been excellent. So yeah, I can imagine it'll be very good.
Yeah, it is very slow, but there is a bit of blood and guts, not guts, blood.
The guts are non-negotiable, I'm afraid. Unless there's guts.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, how about you?
Nice. Well, speaking of blood and guts, so my top three most recently watched, we've got Voices from Beyond, which was the last ever theatrically released film from Lucio Fulci. I got the Blu-ray of that from Severin Films as part of a bundle, and it on the slipcover, there's a quote which bills it as Fulci's last good film. And I don't think that's true, because he also made in 1994 Door into Silence, which I thought was pretty good. But it was a what would you call it? It was a direct-to-video film, basically. Yeah, Voices from Beyond, kind of a supernatural whodunit with pretty good cast, a few very, very nice sequences, and it felt not quite as good as classic Fulci, but it was obviously him operating at somewhere close to his glory days. I also watched Satusuro Night, which is another film starring Susanna. Do you remember I mentioned Susanna, the Indonesian scream queen? So it's just another film where Susanna is a wronged woman, and then she gets supernatural revenge on the people who wronged her. Every single Susanna film is exactly the same. But this was it was all right. It wasn't the best Susanna that I've seen, but it was pretty good fun. A few creative deaths, some nice bits where she's a ghost flying around and fighting someone in like a jungle, which I enjoy. So yeah, it was pretty good. And most recently watched yesterday was The Frenchman's Garden, which is a rural psycho thriller written by, directed by, and starring Paul Naschy, real name Jacinto Molina or Jacinto Molina. I don't know which pronunciation it would be. He's known as the Spanish Lon Chaney. He played the Wolfman many times, and he also did lots and lots of different types of projects, and he was one of those people who kind of forged his own path. He got into films on his own. He was very kind of independent. He wrote a lot of his own scripts, and he started directing his own films later on as well, and he was very good at it. And he came from like a non-film background. He was originally a weightlifter. But yeah, it was a very, very good film. It was based on a real life case of a kind of serial killer in France in the sort of turn of the 20th century. Very, very chilling, kind of, brutal, very good performances, including some of my sort of favorite Spanish performers from that period, from that sort of milieu of directors and writers. Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. I'm a big Nashi fan. I've seen like almost every film from Nashi. And some of them are good, some of them are bad. This one, I would say, is right up there with something like a film that I'm intending to get you to watch at some point, The Devil Incarnate. Yeah, really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
"1986" is Hannah and Her Sisters, which is Woody Allen's 15th film as a director, and widely considered one of his major works. It blends family drama with comedy, has characters falling in and out of love with each other, and all the while never leaving the island of Manhattan, which makes it archetypical of the type of movie most people think of when they think of a Woody Allen picture. The snappy dialogue, naturalistic acting, and precise yet unshowy camera work come together to form a portrait of a collection of New Yorkers who chalk themselves into one uncomfortable situation after another before somehow arriving at a happy conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's your kind of personal history with this film? I know you're a big Woody Allen fan.
I remember when I was maybe like 12 or 13, and there was a Woody Allen film on TV, and I remember making the decision not to watch it because I knew that I'd heard about Woody Allen and I was already into films, but I somehow I'd heard enough, or I had a sense, and I knew that it wasn't for me. I was too young to watch Woody Allen, basically, not because of the themes or anything, but just the type of films it was. And I don't think Hannah and Her Sisters was the first one I watched, but it was one of the very early ones I watched. And this was the first one that kind of stood out for me. And at that age, I still didn't understand it. I didn't really understand what the characters were talking about or their motivations or anything. But somehow it's still something about it still kind of resonated with me. I don't know if it was different enough from any other kind of film I'd watched. Yeah, maybe it was more the style of it, the way the dialogue was written and the way the actors delivered it. I think it also, at the time I was living in rural England, and I had lived in New York previous to that, and was maybe kind of dreaming of getting back to New York City as soon as I could. It kind of created this idea or it sort of matched this idea of New York that I had in my mind. Yeah, and so I don't know, it's a film I've watched maybe 3 or 4 times over the years since then. And again, like a lot of these films, each time I watch it, I get something else out of it. But I'd be very interested to hear what your reaction is to it.
Well, after watching it, I posted on Blue Skies. I do about every film that I watch. And what I said was that I thought it was very well made, very well structured, very well written, but I didn't like it. And I think that comes down basically to the fact that the things that interest Woody Allen, the kind of characters, the kind of class of people, the kind of situations, and the kind of place, which you've already mentioned, that really interest Woody Allen, are not things that interest me, unfortunately. I acknowledge that it was very well made. I wasn't bored watching it or anything. I don't regret watching it. I was fine with it. I was taken along with it. I was involved while watching it. But I also found things just a little bit grating. There weren't many of the characters that I particularly like, which I think is sort of intended, and you're supposed to sort of grow to like them as the film goes along. And they're sort of supposed to grow to like themselves as the film goes along. But there were just
Yeah. This time I was watching it, kind of through your eyes, and that's kind of the intention of this. And I mean, the first thing I thought of was our discussion of Before Sunset, which is that you're not into films that you don't like movies about middle class people talking about middle class problems. And that's basically a summary of this film. And not only, talking about the middle class problems, but also just sort of us experiencing and seeing them like go through their middle class problems. Doesn't surprise me that you didn't like it. Well, I get maybe we can talk a little bit about this. Like you said you thought it was well written and some of the ideas. But you said that the things that seem to interest Woody Allen or seem to interest him in terms of what he wants to write a story about are not things that interest you. So what are those things?
Well, I think he's interested in the sort of issues. Well, he's interested in relationships, obviously, which I'm kind of okay with. But sort of infidelities, temptations, how people deal with those, relationships that start out in one way and then sort of transform and end up another way, that kind of thing. I think he's very interested in those. I think I mean, he's very neurotic. I mean, he's obviously a neurotic personality. And I mean, that was another thing, like the Woody Allen character. I really hated him, and I also saw a lot of myself in him, and there's probably a connection between those two things. Yeah, so those kinds of things, I think, and just his, well, I guess it's part of his sort of sensibility. You know, he's very into, I don't know, what are some of the sort of cultural touchstones of the film? You've got Cole Porter, you've got bookshops, you've got, as you said, the island of Manhattan, all that kind of stuff. None of that really appeals to me. It's not a sensibility that I connect with in any way. And you know, that's not necessarily bad. It's not bad to be exposed to another sensibility. It's fine. But you know, it's obviously just aimed at people who do find that, you know, compelling, and who find those kinds of characters and those kinds of problems sort of compelling and interesting to watch and think about. But it's just not something that I find particularly interesting to watch and think about. But you know, when I say I appreciated it, but I didn't like it, the same is true for like the Beatles. I don't like the Beatles, but I understand they're very, very good. They're just not for me.
When I was watching it this time, yeah, just how unlikable the characters are. Well, it is sort of Woody Allen's thing, is just to, you know, very much expose us to the flaws in people, and it's just kind of really emphasizing that. And as you said, like, you know, they maybe do learn about themselves, and they overcome those flaws over the course of the film. I mean, I think one thing is Woody Allen, I don't think he writes films for anybody but himself. And I think, and famously, he writes a film, he shoots it as soon as he can, and then he moves on to the next film, and he doesn't really think about any of his previous films. I think he writes because that's what interests him, or that's what his way of kind of thinking about things and thinking about the world. I don't know how conscious he is of trying to say something in particular. The sense I get is to make an interesting character, obviously, you want them to have flaws, but to bring those flaws so much to the surface, and a lot of the characters, it's very hard to see redeeming qualities for a lot of them. And the other thing I felt watching it this time is they felt very childish, all the characters. There's this sort of cosmetic idea of them, they're wealthy, they live in New York, they dress well, they're kind of they go to the opera, they're kind of put forward as sophisticated people, but they behave like children pretty much. And I mean, out of the characters, did you find any of them more or less likable?
Well, I mean, I think the most likable was probably Hannah, I would say, because, well, in a sense, she's kind of given the least to do. She's the one who has her flaws least exposed, and we only really see her flaws in the context of other people interpreting her actions in a way that's offending them. And she also seems to be quite self-sacrificing. She's often being the peacemaker with her parents and that kind of thing. So I quite liked her as a character. I thought not Lee, the other sister, what's her name? Holly, yeah. I kind of liked her as well, in a kind of she's messed up, but she's doing her best kind of way. She's obviously very selfish.
She goes to the punk show. That's why you like her.
Yeah, she just goes to the punk show. Yeah. I appreciated that, although I didn't think that was a good representation of punk in 1986. That's like a 1972 idea. Not too early. But yeah, it seemed like a bit of a Richard Hell style punk show. Anyway, the character that I really took against was Michael Caine's character, which I think you're supposed to. He's a nasty piece of work.
Yes,
pretty much all the way through, and self-pitying and cowardly and
and bullying, and I mean the scene where he's kind of talking Lee into having the affair, and just how manipulative he's being, and almost trying to I think he wouldn't even think to himself that he was being manipulative. Like we sometimes hear his sort of internal monologue, and I think he thinks he's a good person, even while he's being very extremely manipulative and sort of bullying and gaslighting her and all these things just to get her into bed.
Don't we all think that we're good people, even when we're doing bad things?
Yes, yeah. But I agree. He was very unlikable throughout. I thought maybe Frederick Max von Sydow, the artist, he's kind of likable just because he doesn't seem to put up with the same bullshit as everyone else in the film.
Yeah, but he's got his own bullshit, hasn't he? I've got very little time for your temperamental artists who are so self-serious about their art and all that. Yeah, I found him a little bit irritating. I mean, it was interesting to me that Holly was the one. I mean, like you mentioned, she takes Woody Allen to the punk show, and she's taking drugs and all that kind of thing. She's the only one who is depicted as existing outside of that sort of wealthy, high-class opera appreciating, world. And at the end of the film, it's like her redemption is, oh no, she's been assimilated back into it, which I think reveals, again, something about Woody Allen's sensibilities and something about why they don't match with mine, perhaps.
What did you think of Woody Allen's character's story? I mean, it's a little bit separate from the rest of the film.
Well, I mean, like I say, I saw a lot of myself in him as a fellow, hypochondriac. I understood a lot of those feelings. I thought he was obviously also very, very, very selfish, very self-obsessed, very neurotic. I didn't really buy his transformation at the end. That he watched Duck Soup, was it, and realized, none of it really matters. So you might as well just have a good time while you're here. Because for one thing, I think that's a very flawed personal philosophy. Because sure, but that's not really enough to hang your life on. Just have a good time while you're here. Seems not to be very well thought out.
Well, I think it was just an overcorrection from being suicidal. Yeah, maybe it's a better philosophy than, I mean. So he goes through that whole thing where he's hypochondriacal, and then he tries to find like the answer in God, in religion, in Christianity, and the Hare Krishnas. So he's searching for some kind of meaning. Yeah. So he hits the point where he decides there's no meaning to life, so why not kill yourself? So then he's desperate for some kind of meaning. And I guess if you find meaning in the Marx Brothers, it's better than no meaning at all. But I agree, it's not maybe not enough going forward. But I think I don't necessarily think Woody Allen is particularly deep, like in his story, in the exploration of the themes. I think it's a very simple idea. Like somebody's looking for meaning, and then, like you said, his conclusion is, well, there's fun stuff in life, so that'll do for now.
I don't buy that character would stick with that. I would imagine in a few months he's going to be back to his neurotic hypochondriac self.
Yeah, I agree. And in the next Woody Allen film, the Woody Allen character would be back to that anyway. So
yeah, how much of his character is sort of him doing self-insert, self-therapy?
Yeah, a lot of it, I think. And I agree with you that Hannah is maybe the most likable. The other two sisters kind of resent her because she seems to be the perfect one, and she's got everything together. She says stuff that the other sisters seem quite sensitive to. They interpret as her being critical of them, even if she doesn't mean it. But I also wonder, I was thinking sometimes maybe she does mean it a little bit. Maybe she likes the fact that they resent her a little bit, or she likes the fact that she's seen in this way. There was the line, I think a couple of characters say about her that she doesn't need anything. Like she gives a lot, but she needs so little. And I think when Elliot, the Michael Caine character, says that to her, they kind of hold on her and her like thinking about that, which I interpreted maybe as this, like she doesn't see it that way at all. Like she needs a lot. Just because she's giving a lot and doesn't ask for much, it doesn't mean she necessarily doesn't need a lot. So I thought she was quite an interesting character.
I agree. And I think like the relationship with her and Michael Caine's quite interesting because like at no point am I really sure what he thinks about her. Like we know what she thinks about him. She loves him. She's sort of devoted to him. She's willing to do lots of things to make her life with him work. Whereas his entire relationship with her and with the other characters almost seems to be reactive. You know, like he has this affair and then he sort of feels guilty about it, and so then he's back in love with her, but then he's torn between the two, and it's like his entire relationship, his entire way of thinking about her just depends on whatever else is happening in his life. There's no sort of, it doesn't seem like there's a one-to-one connection between him and her. It's like he's always reacting to something else and sort of impressing that upon their relationship.
I think, yeah, but again, I mean, like I was saying before, I think he does think that he loves her, and maybe he does really love her. He's also leaving himself open to falling in love with other women. I think what appeals to me about a lot of Woody Allen's film, for me, what it looks like is his writing process is, you know, taking any kind of stray thought he has and kind of just, you know, playing it out. Like, what if he acted on those things, and sort of focusing on the worst impulses that we have. Maybe they appeal to me because I have more of those thoughts that I don't act on, but appreciate seeing them play out. And not that I don't think like they're meant to be like, you know, morality tales or anything like that.
Oh, I didn't get the sense there was any kind of moral message in the film at all.
Okay.
I thought it was just meant to be a portrait of a bunch of people working through their problems.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And the fact that the fact that it is a happy ending for Holly and Lee. It's not really a happy ending. I mean, she doesn't know, but in a way, it's not really a happy ending for Hannah because she's stuck with this guy who's clearly a jerk.
Yeah. But then if she doesn't know, maybe it's fine.
Yeah. Right. What did you think of the way it was shot and the acting and all that stuff?
Like you said, it was very kind of understated. I thought, well, the acting I thought was very good, very believable, very naturalistic. The way it was shot, it wasn't showy. You know, it wasn't doing any fancy camera work. It was all very tasteful, all very elegant. I thought, very economical. You know, it tells the story. It's a lot going on. You've got lots of different characters, lots of plots and subplots and things like that, and it all fits together nice and brief, and I thought it was very economically structured and put together. And I thought that the way it was shot kind of lent itself to that. There's you know, simple shots that kind of showed you what was going on. They established everything very cleanly, and you were there. I don't think the camera work was designed like we talked about with Paths of Glory. I kind of felt that the camera was trying to suggest certain things, like, you know, movement towards the inevitable, that kind of thing. I didn't feel that with this film at all. I felt, you know, the camera is where it needs to be to get this scene done. It didn't strike me as being particularly meaningful.
One thing he does with the camera, I guess it's camera work or it's the blocking, which became, I don't know, I think he had been doing it before this, maybe, but definitely it was in this film and in a lot of his subsequent films, which is sort of characters just moving out of frame, like characters who are in the scene, just being off frame for like significant chunks of a scene. And you still hear their voice, but you just don't see them. Did you read anything into that as sort of an intentional bit of form to match what was going on in the story?
To be honest, I didn't notice it. Can you think of a specific example?
I think in the, you know, there's the Thanksgiving scenes, the one right at the beginning and then later on, and then one that, you know, a year later. And I think some of the scenes in the Thanksgiving party, maybe in the kitchen, characters are off. And then when Holly and Max von Sydow are having their kind of argument, often one of them is out of frame, either in a different room, but they're carrying on this conversation the whole time.
Did you read something into that technique?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was this film. I remember the first time I noticed it and being kind of quite taken with it as a thing. Like, it's just something you don't often see in films. I mean, there's an obvious kind of thing where if a character is sort of left alone in frame, even if they're having a conversation with somebody else, it's just sort of isolating them and kind of showing this lack of real connection with them, even though they're having this discussion. So I think it does that. And then also I think it's also just kind of putting you in the situation. Like you feel at the Thanksgiving parties, you feel like you're there. And just like in a party, you're not going to be seeing everybody all the time, even if you're talking to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I did feel that, like, the camera was almost like, you know, your point of view shot a lot of the time. Like in the bookshop, when they're walking around the bookshop, you know, it's kind of following Michael Caine, but not really. It's the camera's sort of just there, but it's almost like you were just at the other end of the stacks browsing alongside him and just happened to overhear the conversation a little bit, you know.
Yes, yeah. And he often does, street scenes. He'll often shoot from the camera will be on the other side of the street from where the characters are.
Right.
So you'll see them walking, and you'll see a few other people walking by until you see who the character who you're meant to be following.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had one question. There's one character that we haven't mentioned who shows up 3 or 4 times, and that's the character of the maid who's working in the house. So she shows up several times. She's often there, just sort of when characters are having an argument, quite revealing. She's sort of just outside the door or just coming out of another room or something like that. Mm-hmm. Did you think there was anything? To me, it was interesting that you had, again, these middle class people, in fact, not even really middle class, like upper middle class, lower upper class, whatever, talking about their middle class problems, getting themselves into all kinds of hijinks. And then you had this, this person whose job was to basically serve them in a fancy uniform, just sort of being like not even really being noticed or acknowledged most of the time, but probably really aware of everything that's going on, more so than the characters themselves. Did you have any thoughts or reflections on that character?
The only thing is, I don't think it's necessarily a class thing, but other than the fact that meant to emphasize the fact that these are middle class people with middle class problems, like being very whiny about their middle class problems. Yeah. And probably completely oblivious to actual problems that people have in the world.
There were 2 things that I thought about while watching the film, or two sort of comparisons I was making in my head. Mm-hmm. One was Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. I thought that it reminded me a lot of Seinfeld in that it was a lot of very bad people who didn't realize they were very bad people, and whose problems were entirely self-created. That was one thing that stuck out to me. And another one was The Wolf of Wall Street. And this was more about my sort of reaction to the film, because basically, like The Wolf of Wall Street, I was thinking this is really, really well made. It's very, very well scripted, very well directed. But I don't want to spend any time with these people. I don't want to be in their company in the cinema, or in this case, on my computer. Yeah, that was sort of my part of why I didn't particularly enjoy the film. So I was just kind of thinking, I don't like any of these people, and I don't know why I'm sharing in their problems and watching them navigate all these circumstances. What's your sort of feeling about those 2 things?
I agree with you to an extent. I think Wolf of Wall Street for me is much less likable character, first of all. For me, the characters in hand, like I agree they're unlikable, but they're not like irredeemable, which I would say the guy in Wolf of Wall Street is. And like I said, like for me, they're deeply flawed people, just like we all are. And for me, it just kind of, I can recognize enough about the mistakes they make and the flaws they have that make me kind of think, okay, I can appreciate seeing people who are not exactly like me, but not a million miles away from me in some ways, making the wrong choices and then seeing like what the consequences are of those. Whereas a character like Wolf, we've had this discussion off mic. I like Wolf of Wall Street as a film, but I don't see anything redeemable about him, and I can't relate to him at all, basically.
It's interesting to me that you say that the characters are redeemable, because it doesn't seem to me that any of them are redeemed by the end of the film. Like, they get their happy ending, but it's sort of not they haven't realized really any of their flaws, right? They haven't really grappled with them or come to terms with them for most of the characters. They just sort of move on.
With Michael Caine's character, certainly, I think he's not redeemed, or he doesn't. I don't think he's changed much at all as a person. I think he would probably do the same thing again. But with the other characters, I guess Holly and Lee, I don't think they're that terrible. Holly is sort of directionless. She's trying to find what she's good at or what's going to make her happy in life. And while she's doing that, she's asking her sister for money, and she's being a little dependent, and she's overly sensitive. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like the fact that what brings her happiness is being recognized for the script that she's written, and maybe just getting that kind of validation isn't necessarily the best thing for her. Like maybe that ultimately that long term that's not going to bring your happiness. So I don't know, maybe redeemable isn't the right word, but I get the feeling with all the characters except for Elliot that they made mistakes and that they might not make those mistakes again.
Okay.
They might make other mistakes, but they're kind of, in that sense, they're real humans, real characters.
Okay. So, well, this was I've seen a couple of Woody Allen's before. If I was going to watch another Woody Allen film, and maybe appreciate it more than this one, what would you recommend? What do you think I would get along with?
So I guess it depends. Would you want to go more comedy, or more drama, or more like thriller, or what sort of what genre of Woody Allen do you think you'd want to try?
I think a thriller would be interesting. I've seen one or two of his comedies. I've seen this dramedy, I guess you'd call it. So yeah, what's his thriller work like?
Actually, not too many. Have you seen Match Point?
No, it's the tennis one, right?
It's the tennis one. Yeah,
I've not.
That's pretty good.
It.
Okay, that's a pretty good thriller. Have you seen Vicky Cristina Barcelona?
No, but I remember both of those films. I remember coming out and everyone talking about them, but I didn't see either of them. All right, maybe we can do one of those on a future episode, and I'll Woody Allen can redeem himself in my eyes. Just to be clear, I didn't hate this film. I didn't hate the film.
Yeah,
it was good. Just not my kind of thing. In 1972, Shunya Ito made Female Prisoner Number 701, Scorpion. The film stars Meiko Kaji as Nani Matsushima, a woman who's betrayed by her detective boyfriend and finds herself in prison where she plans her revenge. Made as a piece of women in prison exploitation, the film became known for its unusual stylistic flourishes and artful camera work, as well as the intense performance of its lead. It was followed by 3 sequels which, while maintaining an exploitation sensibility, managed to transcend mere sleaze. For our genre film this episode, we'll be examining the convergence of exploitation and art in our discussion of Female Prisoner Number 701, Scorpion.
Okay, so to start with, what's your relationship with this film?
It's not a film that I could say I have a very deep relationship with, to be honest. I'd seen Meiko Kaji in the Lady Snowblood films, because I'm kind of interested in Japanese horror. Well, I'm interested in all horror, but I'm interested in Japanese horror. And you know, these films are sort of adjacent to that. So I saw her in Lady Snowblood and Lady Snowblood 2, and I like both of those. And then I saw her in Wandering Ginza Butterfly. And you know, this series of films is one of her sort of key starring vehicles, right? So I saw the first one 4 or 5 years ago now, and then I bought the box set recently and watched the other 3 in the series, and that put the first one more into context for me. I'm not a fan of the women in prison genre. I don't find it particularly compelling. I think it's, you know, it's misogynistic, it's nasty, it's designed to be. But when I saw this, I thought this is sort of subversive. It's kind of interesting. And it reminded me of something like I Spit on Your Grave, in that it sort of tries to have its cake and eat it too, where it's trying to sort of have a feminist message while also sort of being required to titillate the audience in some way, and sort of getting caught between 2 stools. But I thought that this film, very, very interesting. And then when I saw the other films in the series, which maybe we'll come to in future episodes, especially the second one, I think would be interesting to see. I thought it kickstarted something quite interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a film that I love in the way that some of the other ones we've seen are, but I think it's an interesting film, and I think it's worth discussing. So with that in mind, what were your first impressions on seeing this film?
I liked it a lot, despite all the exploitation stuff. There's a fantastic film in there. If you cut out certain parts of it, I think it would be a really, really fantastic film. Like you said, it's hard to really love because of all the exploitation stuff. And the exploitation stuff is mainly the nudity, but part of what also makes it hard to watch a little bit. And, I'm sure, but it seemed like, the actors must have been a tough shoot.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sure there was real blood spilled probably, and real pain inflicted on a lot of these actors. But overall, as the story and the character and the way it was shot, all of that I liked a lot.
Well, I think we have to start with the star, with Meiko Kaji. So you know of her sort of, I guess, because of the Stray Cat Rock series of films, which you gave to me very kindly, the Blu-ray set, and we discussed her a little bit then. Was this the first film you'd seen her in?
I think so. Yeah, I think the first like full film I'd watched her in. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of her?
Yeah, I mean, she's great. She, the film doesn't quite work without. Well, I don't think it does work without her. The shot that they use a lot of her, the camera, sort of high angle, looking down at her, turning her head and just staring at somebody who she's decided is now on her list. That look is incredible, and I mean that look sort of does a lot of the work in terms of just the plot and believing her as a character. Yeah, so I thought she was great.
Yeah, so there's a great shot, when they're all digging and refilling in the holes outside. Not when she's digging the big hole, but when they're all separately digging and filling in little holes. And there's a shot where the one of the police or the detective, he's up on the hill and looking down at them. And you've got this sea of prisoners digging holes. They're all dressed the same and they all kind of look the same. But she's turning and looking at him, and just in this sea of people, you can instantly spot her. Like the look, the way she's looking, the way she's standing, instantly stands out. It's a great bit of a great physical performance. It's very simple, but it's very, very distinctive. Yeah.
So I thought she was great. I mean, a lot of the actors were very good. Well made. Obviously, doesn't have a Hollywood budget, but very, very well made. I mean, the style was pretty clear. It's sort of high energy. A lot of the editing is quite quick. It's not. I guess there are a few kind of gory bits. There's the shard of glass in the guy's eye, and then there's the. I don't know if I think I'm using the right term. The expressionistic sequence in the shower. I guess just before the guy gets the shard of glass in his eye, where the villain, she's got she's got sort of kabuki style makeup. And the lighting, it's very dramatic, and she's very, very interestingly shot.
Yeah, and it's weird that they sort of cuts that, and I don't know, it's presented in such a sort of straightforward way, like, oh, and now this is happening, and now it's over and it's done with. But it works completely. You accept it completely that this is that you understand that it's a stylistic thing. It doesn't feel jarring. I mean, it feels kind of shocking, but not jarring. It feels of a piece with what's happening around it.
And I think it's the kind of thing, I don't watch much anime, but I think it's the kind of thing, I don't know if anime influenced that or that, that kind of style influenced anime, but I feel like anime does it. Like I notice it more like influence of anime on like Western animation and maybe more recent, like late 90s or early 2000s animation, where they'll happily, like, I don't know, Ren and Stimpy or those kind of things, where they'll just, for a sequence, they'll change the style and it'll get much more expressionistic like that.
Well, speaking of the kind of style of it, there were a couple of sequences where there's kind of a blue room, like a set of a blue room.
Yeah.
What did you think of those?
Yeah, that was kind of her whole backstory presented in this kind of theatrical, artistic, almost like Michel Gondry, the revolving wall and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, that was all fantastic. That was great.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, I guess you haven't seen this kind of film before, like a women in prison film, or this level of exploitation. Maybe you have.
Maybe not like sat down and watched one from beginning to end. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a few. So, I mean, obviously, your favorite director on the show so far, Bruno Mattei, he was quite well known for making women in prison, often women in Nazi SS camp prison kind of films. And they're just, they're just horrible. They're just designed to sort of revolt and titillate at the same time. And I thought this one was really interesting because it brings this sort of artistic sensibility. It's very experimental. Ito really gets creative with what he's doing with the cameras and the sets and the makeup and all of the different ideas. And there is actually a sort of story to what's happening. Matsushima's trying to get her revenge, and she's set up as like a wronged woman. There is sort of this through line of her just being sort of tough and resisting until she gets what she wants, essentially. I was curious. So at the end, when she kills the detective, or he throws the knife up, and it goes up in front of the flag, right? I was wondering, did you see this as meant to be in any way sort of metaphorical, or like a microcosm of Japanese society?
I think the film starts with the shot of the Japanese flag. Yeah, and then there's that, and then there's one shot. I think she's wearing white cloth. And there's a drop of red blood. And so that kind of forms the Japanese flag. At one point, they walk past a building, and there's a huge sign at the front. And what does it say? It says, "The soul and harmony of beautiful Japan." That's the translation they give. So I think that, I mean, to me, it felt like there was a very intentional, what I read as a critique of Japanese society.
I think that building with the sign is meant to be the Yakuza headquarters, which, the soul and heart of beautiful Japan is pointed.
Right. But the fact that law officers and the policemen are all corrupt, to me, it felt like, based on the film as a whole, it felt like that was a very intentional critique of maybe the patriarchal side of Japanese society.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, like in some of the later films, you get more sort of specific social context. Like I think in the third one, you get a character who was part of the student protests in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, and was tortured by the police. And, he sort of rescues Matsushima and falls in love with her. And there's more social context added to, the sort of generalized critique. But it's obviously about corruption. What I said at the start when I was sort of talking about my history with the film, do you think that a film like this can have a successful kind of critique of a misogynistic or patriarchal society when it's also designed to titillate through scenes of, sexualizing and torturing women?
Just now thinking about that, I was trying to wonder, because there seems to be such a strong feminist message to it, but like you say, there is like so much female nudity and like, lots of scenes of women being punished and tortured and treated so badly. And there is a almost gang rape early on, but there is also like the female prisoners that gang rape the three hostages towards the end of the film. But for me, maybe the most important shot or sequence, one of the female characters is, topless as they are throughout most of the film. But there's a very intentional shot of one of the guards staring at her and leering at her, and like I think even like licking his lips. I think so. When did this came out? 72? I'm pretty sure, if I remember my film history. This is before the sort of the concept of the male gaze popularized. But to me, it felt like it was maybe it's a generous reading, but I think you could potentially read the whole film. You could even not excuse, but you could read all the female nudity as kind of making us, the viewer, complicit in the way that the guards and everybody else is basically perving on these women. So you could read it as like, we're going to show you all these things and you're going to be titillated, but we're also going to show you why you're wrong to feel that way.
Well, that's interesting, because I was watching it this time and thinking to myself, this is the least sexy thing I've ever seen in my life. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah.
The only moment that I thought was sort of genuinely designed to titillate was the lesbian sex scene with the undercover.
Yes, I agree. And even like the first shot of female nudity is just like all the women just in a row trooping along,
being inspected, right, by the men underneath looking up through the grate.
Yeah, but first of all, do you think that's what Ito, the director, was trying to do, or do you think that is potentially a fair reading of it?
I think it's potentially a fair reading. I think probably. I think that this film was meant to be, pure exploitation. I think that when they realized what was successful about the film, the next three sequels become really interesting because they're still shocking, they're still exploitative, but what they go more in on is the sort of weird artistic surreal elements, the expressionistic stuff, like the visual poetry and metaphor. I think that Ito was interested not in making exploitation, but in making, really good films. So I think he probably did what he could with this film, whilst recognizing that, his remit was to make an exploitation women in prison film. This is what always happens with these films. It kind of falls between two stools, like I say. If you watch something like I Spit on Your Grave, it's obviously very much meant to be on the side of the girl who's gone through the experience and is getting her revenge. But on the other hand, we are made to experience what she experiences in extreme and grueling detail. Basically, there are people for whom that is going to be exciting, and that's part of the audience. So I think there's a sort of hypocrisy, even if the fair reading, even if you're trying to subvert that kind of thing, if it's made to be that, and there is an audience for that, and you are still trying to appeal to that audience, then there's only so much you can do.
It might come back to our discussion of Wolf of Wall Street. I think in that case it's not intentional even, but there's definitely an audience of people who watch that film the wrong way. I think you're right. I think it seems like he was asked to make a certain type of film, and maybe if he wasn't, even to get his message across, doesn't necessarily need to include that much nudity and exploitation of the women. But I mean, in a way, you could argue that it all does work together. One other kind of interesting thing I wanted to mention was her line of dialogue towards the end. What did she say? She says, "To be deceived is a woman's crime."
Yes, I wrote that down as well.
How did you interpret that?
That actually made me think that, well, this is part of the double bill challenge, but it made me think of Elliot's deceiving of Hannah and Lee, and making them feel guilty about it. It kind of it felt a bit like, well, I guess the meaning is like, a kind of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. The crime that she's paying for is that she fell for this guy's tricks. That was how I read it. How did you read it?
Yeah, I think so. But she, as far as I recall, she's saying it kind of to or about another woman, and so it felt like, I mean, she's experienced it, but then she's also kind of telling the other woman, like, don't let it happen to you.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Are you interested in seeing the other films in the series?
I am, actually. As soon as this one finished, and I went to read about it a little bit on Wikipedia, I was very happy to see that not only were there sequels, but it's same director and star. Sometimes they have the same title, but completely nothing to do with the previous one. But the sequels continue her story, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, that's right.
So now it's time to head into this double feature challenge, where we try to identify the points that would make the movies complement each other as an awkward double bill.
Do you have any initial thoughts on how these films could work together? They're obviously very, very different. They're always very different, but I can see. I think there's some stuff here we can work with. Yeah, I think so too. I think basically the relationships between the women in the two films. Not only, I think we can bring the men in later. But the relationships between the women. I mean, Matsu she goes in. She feels very much like a loner. But she does have the two specific characters who she bonds with, and he feels like very protective of, and seems like she'd be very loyal to. And then you have the women who are against her, just because they enjoying the power that they can have over her, in terms of like torturing her at the beginning. And then was it Katagiri, who has been told by the policeman to kill her. And so she has this like very clear different relationships. At one point, I thought maybe Katagiri would turn and they would kind of join forces. And I was kind of hoping that would happen. I thought that would have been interesting. But she doesn't, and she ends up burning to death. And that's because she maybe listened to Sugimi, the policeman. Yeah, they've both been deceived by the same guy.
That's right.
Both of them committed the same sin.
Yes, that's right. And so, well, we can bring him in now, but yes, Sugimi definitely felt like the Elliot character. Again, like Sugimi probably knows what a bad guy he is, and Elliot doesn't allow himself to think of him that way. But I think he is a bad guy, Elliot, in the way that he's manipulative of the women.
Yeah. I thought exactly the same thing. It was interesting, the relationship. So in Hannah and her sisters, you have them kind of undercutting each other quite a lot of the time, right? Like a lot of it is about the sort of the surface level nice, but underneath they're sort of competing and, I don't know, not really sniping, but just undercutting each other a little bit.
Yeah, passive aggressive, like these little jabs.
And in Female Prisoner Scorpion, it's just much more on the surface, but there's sort of rivalry thing going on between the female characters in both films.
Yes,
and like you say, both being deceived by the men in their lives. In one case, it's Elliot, and in another case, it's the prison guards.
I think there's nobody says it directly, I don't think, but she's the most beautiful of all the women in the film. Like there's one specific scene where the older, not just the older ones, but they're using strawberries or something to put the red lipstick on. And it reminded me a lot of, in Hannah and Her Sisters, the mother. There's a scene where the mother has very kind of deep red lipstick on when she's, maybe towards the end, when she's, trying to dress herself up to flirt with the younger men.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, so there's actually, surprising amount of similarities between these two films.
Okay, so generally speaking, both films are kind of examining relationships between women and the sort of manipulative effect that some men try to have on them.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Very good. Good double bill.
So that's the end of our awkward double bill for this episode. Are you a fan of either of these films? Do you now feel tempted to check out the other one? Either way, we'd love to hear from you.
If you have any comments or suggestions for future films, please send them to awkwarddoublebills@gmail.com. And you can also follow the show over on Blue Sky at adbpod.bsky.social.